Very well. Agreed. That was my plan. You thought of that? Very well. Agreed. That was my plan. Greetings. You thought of that?
Greetings, my lord.
What?
Yes,
mortal?
my lord.
What is it now?
Wait till you
Hello.
see me in action.
I must hunt soon. That was my plan. You thought of that?
Welcome to our village.
Aye?
What, mortal? What is it now? I must hunt soon. Agreed. Greetings. Greetings. What, mortal? Very well. What is it now? I must hunt soon. That was my plan. Very well. Greetings. Agreed. You thought of that? Agreed. You thought of that? Very well. That was my plan. Very well. You thought of that? Agreed. That was my plan. You thought of that? That was my plan. Very well. Agreed. You thought of that? That was my plan. Very well. Agreed. You thought of that? What is it now? Agreed. Very well. What, mortal? That was my plan. Very well. Agreed. You thought of that? Die. That was my plan. That was my plan. Very well.
First blood.
Death rages. Agreed. That was my plan. You thought of that? I must hunt soon. You thought of that? Agreed. That was my plan. Very well. I must hunt soon. That was my plan. Very well. You thought of that? You thought of that? Agreed. Die. Very well. I hunger. Death rages. That was my plan. I hunger. You thought of that? Very well. Agreed. Die. That was my plan. Agreed. Greetings. That was my plan. You thought of that? Very well. That was my plan. You thought of that? Death rages. Agreed. You thought of that? I hunger. Die. Death rages. That was my plan. Very well. That was my plan. You thought of that? Very well. You thought of that? Agreed. That was my plan. That was my plan. Very well. Agreed. Die. You thought of that? Death rages. I hunger. That was my plan. Agreed. Very well. Agreed. Very well. That was my plan. Agreed. I hunger. That was my plan. What is it?
Our brethren's town is under attack.
That was my plan. Agreed. You thought of that? You thought of that? That was my plan. Very well. Agreed. Agreed. That was my plan. You thought of that? Very well. Very well. That was my plan. You thought of that? Agreed. I hunger. Souls mine. Agreed. That was my plan. Very well. was my plan. Agreed. Very well. Death rages. Agreed. That was my plan. Very well. I hunger. You thought of that. That was my plan. Die. I hunger. That was my plan. Agreed. That was my plan. You thought of that. Rages. Agreed. Very well. Death. What?
Give me something to do.
That was my plan. Must hunt soon. I hunger. Rages. Agreed. You thought of that? Very well. I hunger. That was my plan. Agreed. That.
Our brethren's
Very
town
well.
is under attack.
Agreed. That was my plan. You thought of that. Die. That was my plan. Very well. Agreed. You thought of that. Death rages. That was my plan. Agreed. You thought of that. I hunger. Die. That was my plan. Very well. Agreed. I hunger. That was my plan. Death rages. Rages. I hunger. Very well. You thought of that? That was my plan. Very well. Agreed. Very well. I hunger. Death rages. What is
Give
it
me
now?
something to do.
What is it now? That was my plan. Very well. You thought of that?
Our brethren's town is under attack.
Agreed. What, mortal? That was my plan. You thought of that? That was my plan. Agreed. That was my plan. Very well. You thought of that? Agreed. That was my plan. You thought of that? Greetings. Greetings. Very well.
Our brethren's town is under attack.
Agreed. That was my plan. Agreed. You thought of that? Very well. Agreed. That was my plan. You thought of that? I hunger. Death rages.
Our brethren's town is under attack.
I hunger. That was my plan. Agreed. What mortal? Must come soon. Greetings. What is it now? What mortal? Very well. That was my plan.
Our brethren's
I must
town
hunt
is under
soon.
attack.
You thought of that? Mortal. Greetings. What is it now? Must hunt soon. Very well. You thought of that?
Our brethren's town is under
My
attack.
plan. What is it now? I hunger. That was my plan. Rages. You thought of that? Die. Breathe.
town is under attack.
That was my plan. I hunger. Agreed. You thought of that. That was my plan. That was my plan. Agreed. You thought of that. Death rages. Dominating. You thought of that. Very well. Agreed. I must hunt soon. That was my plan. Agreed. You thought of that. That was my plan. You thought of that. That was my plan. Very well. That was
Our
my
brethren's
plan.
town is under attack.
Your soul is mine. What is it now? You thought of that? I hunger. Agreed. That was my plan. Very well. That was my plan. Agreed. You thought of that? Greetings. Very well. What is it now? Agreed. I must hunt soon. Thought of that? That was my plan. That was my plan. Agreed. You want to have what? Thought of that?
Our brethren's town is under attack.
Do it. I love you. What you want? I do it. I do it.
Our brethren's town is under attack.
What you want? I love you. I do. I love you. What is it beckons? I do. Who'd you want to do? Must hunt soon. Very well. That was my plan. You thought of that. I love you. Diwaniwanga.
Our brethren's town is under attack.
I love you. Would you want to fresh meat? The night beckons. Glad. Very well. Killing spree. You thought of that? Very well. That was my plan.
Our brethren's town is under attack.
You thought of that? That was my plan. Did you want axe? I must hunt soon. What is it now? Agreed. What? Mortal. Greetings. You thought of that? Very well. That was my plan. I hunger. What, mortal? Agreed. What is it now? That was my plan. Very well. We must hunt soon. That was my plan. What is it now? Very well. What you want? What, mortal? Agreed. That was my plan. You thought of that? Die. Agreed. Very well. That was my plan. Very well. Agreed. You thought of that? Greetings. What? That was my plan. I must hunt soon. Greetings. What is it? Greetings. What? Agreed. Death rages. Very well. That was my plan. What is it now? I must hunt soon. What? That was my plan. I hunger. You thought of that? My plan. I must hunt soon. Greetings. Very well. Agreed. That was my plan. Very well. Agreed. You thought of that. That was my plan. Very well. That was my plan. What, mortal? Greetings. That was my plan. Agreed. That was my plan. Agreed. That was my plan. Agreed. Thought of that? That was my plan. Would you like me? I love you. I must hunt soon.
Our fortress town is under attack.
My plan. I love to greetings. What is it now? I must hunt soon. Agreed. What? What? I must hunt soon. What is it? Thought of that? I must hunt soon. I hunger. Wasiwa. Greetings. Death rages. That was my plan. Very well. Very well. That was my plan. You thought of that? Die.
Hello.
Our forces are under attack.
Yes, my dear. Agreed. You thought of that. Agreed. That was my plan. Very well. That was my plan. I hunger. What is it now? Agreed. Very well. You thought of that? Very well. Agreed. You thought of that? That was my plan. Agreed. You thought of that? Very well.
Greetings,
I
my
must
lord.
hunt soon. What is it now? That was my plan. Very well. Death rages. Die. That was my plan. That was my plan. What? Greeting.
Our forces are under attack.
Killing spree. I must hunt soon.
Hello. Welcome to our village.
What, mortal? That was my plan. I hunger. Thought of that? Very well. Agreed. That was my plan. That was my plan. You thought of that? Die. Death rages. Greetings. I must
Greetings,
hunt
my lord.
soon. Very well. Agreed. Very well. Die. That was my plan. You thought of that? Very well. That was my plan. What is it now? Agreed. You thought of that? Thought of that? Agreed. That was my plan. What, mortal? Very well. That was my plan. I must
Hello.
hunt soon. What is it now? You thought of that? Greetings. Agreed. You thought of that? I hunger. That was my plan.
Welcome to our
What
village.
is it now? What, mortal? Very well.
Who'd you want to kill?
Greetings. Agreed. That was
You want
my
axe?
plan. What is it now? That was my plan. You thought of that?
Welcome to our village.
What, mortal? I must hunt
Hello.
soon. You thought of that? I hunger. That was my plan. What is it now? Agreed. Greetings. What is it now? Very well. What, mortal? You thought of that? Very well. I must hunt soon. Death rages. What is it now? My plan.
Greetings, my lord. Welcome to our village.
More gold is required.
Greetings. You thought of that?
Our forces are under attack.
I must hunt
Greetings, my
soon.
lord.
That was my plan. Very well.
What you want? I do it.
What, mortal? What, mortal?
You want axe?
Greetings. Agreed. Agreed. What is it now? I must hunt soon. That was my plan. You thought of that? What, mortal?
What you want? Dewaniwanga. Dewaniwanga.
Greetings. What is it now? That was my plan. Very well. You thought of that? You thought of that? that? That was my plan. Agreed.
Our forces are under attack.
That was my plan. Very well. You thought of that? That was my plan. Agreed. Killing spree. You thought of that? You thought of that? That was my plan. Agreed. Very well. Very well. You thought of that? Agreed. That was my plan. Plan. Must hunt soon. Greetings. You thought of that? Very well.
Who'd you wanna kill?
What, mortal? What is it now? Must hunt soon. Greetings.
You wanna act? I know.
What is it now? Fresh meat. Agreed. That was my plan. I hunger.
Our forces are under attack.
You thought of that? Very well. You thought of that? That was my plan.
Monster kill!
Very well. What, mortal? That was my plan. Very well. What is it now? Agreed. That was my plan. You thought of that? Agreed. Very well. Greetings. You thought of that? That was my plan.
What is it?
Greetings. You thought of that? What is it now? That was my plan. Very well. I must hunt soon. I must hunt soon. Agreed. You thought of that? That was my plan. Greetings. Agreed. You thought of that? I hunger. That was my plan. You thought of that? Agreed. I hunger. What, mortal? What is it now? Agreed.
Where shall my blood be spilled?
Greetings. Of that? That was my plan. What is it now? You thought of that? Killing spree, double kill. That was my plan. You thought hunt soon.
I hunger. Aye? More gold is required. Wait till you see me
Soon. Agreed. That was my plan. You thought of that. Mortal. That was my
Our
plan.
brethren's town is under attack. Our forces are under attack.
What is it now? What? That was my plan. Agreed. You thought of that? Greetings. I must hunt soon. That was my plan. Very well. Greetings. You thought of that? I must hunt soon. Die. Death rages. That was my plan. I hunger. Very well. Agreed. That was my plan. You thought of that? That was my plan. Agreed. What, mortal? You thought of that? Very well. Agreed. You thought of that? That was my plan. Very well. That was my plan. That. Very well. What is it? What is it now? Greetings. Very well. You thought of that? Agreed. Holy shit! I hunger. Death rages. Your soul is mine. I hunger. That was my plan. I hunger. Very well.
See me in action.
Greetings. Agreed. That was my plan. Thought that. Die. Agreed.
Thy bidding, master.
Thought of that? Agreed. That was my plan. Very well. Agreed. That was my plan. Thought of that. Your soul is mine. Agreed. Killing spree, double kill. I hunger. That was my plan. Dominating. Triple kill. That was my plan. Ultra kill. Unstoppable rampage. Rages. I hunger. Wicked sick.